Hello YouTube, thank you for clicking on this video and shout out to Big Daddy Algorithm for pimping it out to you. My name is Megan and welcome to my channel. Okay, coming at you today with part 2 of my epic Christmas gown thrift flip adventure. For those of you who haven't seen part 1, I'm going to link to it below. Also, there'll probably be a card like somewhere up here on the screen. Part 1 was just me like figuring out what I want to do and then doing the bodice. And then in part 2, I'm going to do the bustle and attach the skirt to the bodice. Put some padding in the boob cups, put the organza and the finishing touches on the dress, and then at the end of this video, you will see the grand reveal. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you've probably seen like update pics, so you probably already have an idea of what it looks like. So, I mean, I don't blame you if you want to skip this video because it's not that interesting, but if you're learning how to sew or you're curious about thrift flipping or upcycling garments, stay tuned because just like in my first video, I'm going to be showing you some of the techniques that I used in this gown, and I will be filming my process in quite a lot more detail than I usually do, which is why I had to do this video in 2 parts. It just ended up being super long because I really went in and like explained things and like showed the whole process of me sewing. This project didn't require any drafting, thankfully, but I really wanted to like go in detail and explain. I feel like when I've done tutorials in the past, I tended to kind of just like skip over parts, mostly because I didn't have a good like phone holder, so I couldn't really get those like overhead shots to show you what I was doing. So in my previous tutorials, I would kind of just like explain what I was gonna do, and then I would just go off camera and do it and then come back and be like, so it's done. I mean, that's nice, but like it's not really helpful to you, right? So in this video, I really wanted to show myself actually working so that you could see what I was doing. Because when I first started learning how to sew, I watched a lot of videos like that on YouTube where people would kind of just film their process, film themselves working, and I would actually see like their hands stitching things. And it really helped me to get a feel for like how to hand sew, what kind of stitches to do, where to put the stitches, how big, how small they should be, like tension on the thread, all of that stuff. So I wanted to kind of give back and show you guys how I did all of that so that if you're hand sewing your own project, you can use this as a reference, hopefully. So I'm not going to ramble too much in the intro because I already did that in my last intro. So I'm going to cut to the footage now. So come along with me while we finish up this gown and do the grand reveal at the end. Let's go. So the inside of this skirt is actually really well constructed, and this is what attracted me to it in the first place. When I saw it hanging on the rack on the thrift store, I was like, I need to bring this home, even though it's way too big and I hated the top. But like, check out the inside. Okay, so we have one layer. It actually has like a built-in petticoat, which super impressed me. So you have this layer of netting on the inside, which is pretty stiff, and that's what helps it hold its shape. But then what really impressed me was the interior of the petticoat has this facing on it, and it's stiffened with horsehair canvas. And that was super impressive because that was actually a Victorian technique. They used to stiffen their skirts with a layer of horsehair canvas at the bottom. And what this does is it actually helps the skirt to hold its shape, and it actually holds the skirt away from you as you walk so that you don't trip over it. So that's how they were able to like run and play sports and walk up and down stairs in those long skirts without hiking them up, because this actually helps the skirt to move better and it keeps it away from under your feet as you're walking. It's a brilliant construction technique that we don't do anymore, and I wish that we did. So I was so excited to see this in the skirt, and that's actually what made me think like there's a lot of potential in this dress. It just needs to be fitting properly, and it needs to be like a more flattering shape. But that's what made me buy this, because the skirt was just really well constructed. So I want to do this justice, and I want to make sure that we really get a good shape going on in this skirt. All right, so I'm actually filming in daylight for once because it is Saturday and I am not at work during daylight hours. So I've got the skirt on. I'm just holding it closed in the back because I don't have any closures in it yet, obviously. So I think what I'm going to do is I don't know if you can see it. Ugh, sorry about my shitty camera work. Okay, I'm going to do like an 1890s style pleat in the back of the skirt to kind of fluff it out a bit. And then I think I'm also going to do a late Victorian / early Edwardian hip pad to wear underneath the skirt. And that's just going to help like fluff it out here and fluff it out at the back so that it gives some shape, and it will also emphasize the waistline of that bodice top because the bodice like comes down to a point, so it's very angled. So I really want to emphasize that conical shape. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to pad this out. Since I can't cinch the bodice in, it's not actually a corset, it has a zipper back. So in order for me to like really nip the waist and like emphasize that waist dip, I'm gonna have to pad this out. So little quick history lesson on Victorian corsetry. They didn't actually cinch their waists down to like 18 inches. That is a myth. They cinched their waist down to what they were comfortable with, usually about 24 or 25 inches, which is the size of my waist naturally. So like this is how much you would ever cinch your waist down to, but they look really tiny in those portraits because what they would do is pad out the hips. So it's all an optical illusion. So the wider you pad your hips out, the smaller your waist is going to look, right? So I'm going to add that padding, and I'm going to make that Victorian style bustle, and I'm going to actually sew it to the inside of the gown. So instead of wearing it as a separate piece like the Victorians would have, I'm just going to sew it in here and make it part of the interior structure of the gown. So that's my plan. And then just put that pleat in the back and then attach the bodice and add the zipper, and this will be pretty much done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, we got to make a bustle. So this is what a Victorian bustle pad looks like, for those of you who don't know. I mean, there were a lot of different shapes of bustle pads, but this is the one that I think I'm going to go with just because it's fluffy enough that it will fluff out the skirts. Like, because there's like 3 layers of skirt here, it is quite heavy. So the problem with like a smaller bustle pad is that the weight of the skirt might actually weigh down the bustle pad. And since I don't have any corsetry on underneath to help the bustle pad keep its shape, I'm going to need something like a little bit extra fluffy so that it can hold its own against the weight of the skirt. So I think we're going to go with this shape here, like the half moon. I might make it a little wider because I want it to fluff out the hips and the bums. So mine's probably going to be like a little wider at both ends, but it's going to be just a half circle, and it's going to come around like this. And instead of having a strap that I tie it around my waist with, I'm going to just sew it to the inside of the gown. So I have this cotton batting here. So I've got this stuff and this stuff. So this is like 100% wool batting. So I'm going to use this to stuff the bustle pad with, and I'm going to use this as the exterior. So it's nice because the cotton and the wool are natural fibers. So any amount of sweating that I do under all those layers, this will just help to kind of wick away any of that moisture. And it'll make it a lot more comfortable to wear for longer periods of time. So I'm going to make it out of this. And then I'm also going to make some padding for the bra cups in the bodice out of this stuff as well. So just to really pad out those areas that I want to be a little more prominent. So this whole thing is just an exercise in structure and the importance of it when creating garments. Here I'm just measuring out the width of the bodice so that I know how wide to make the bustle pad, because it's going to have to be essentially the same width as the inside of the bodice. Once that's done, I'm going to take that width and trace it onto my cotton batting, and that's the guideline that I will use to draft the pattern for the bustle. Once that's done and I've cut out my pattern, I'm now using this satin bias tape to bind off the edges of the bustle, and when that's done, I can go ahead and stuff it. Then I'm just attaching it with a simple back stitch, and I'm going to continue to do that all the way around the edge and on the other side as well. Once the outer edges have been bound off, I'm just taking my wool batting and stuffing the bustle pad with it. Super simple step. Okay, silly me, I just tried on the bustle and then realized that I can't sew it into the dress because the dress closes with a zipper at the back. And if I sew the bustle pad in, then I won't be able to close the dress, which is kind of a problem. So it is going to have to be a separate piece after all. So when I add the bias tape to the top of the bustle, I'm just going to make it extra long so that I can tie it around my waist when I wear the dress. And it is just going to have to be like a separate piece of underwear. So now that I've realized I need to adjust my original plan for this bustle pad, I decided to quilt it to add a little more of a structural element, but also to buy myself some time to have a think on how I'm going to incorporate this bustle pad into the skirt. Ideally, I'd like to attach it somehow because I'm not going to be wearing a corset underneath this, which otherwise would have helped to keep it from slipping down. The problem with just tying it around my waist is that the ties can come loose or slip down as I wear the gown, dislodging the bustle pad and causing it to fall down or get twisted up underneath the skirt. Ideally, we want this to be attached to the skirt somehow to help keep it in place, but it gets tricky with that center back zipper in the way. Hip and bustle pads around the turn of the century were quilted as well, so I guess this ended up being an Edwardian skirt support after all. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and quilted this entire butt pad, and I did that for two reasons. One, because the act of quilting helps it to retain a sort of curved shape, so you can see here that it does actually have a little bit of a curve to it. So that's going to help when I tie it around my waist, and it's going to just help it retain its shape. Also, the quilting keeps it fluffy, and it will keep the weight of the skirts from pressing it down over time and making it go flatter. So it serves two purposes. It also keeps all of the stuffing in here and keeps it in place, which I guess three purposes that it serves. So this is like a proper Edwardian butt pad that I just made. The last step is that I have to bind off the edges here, which I'm going to do with the same satin bias tape as here. And when I do the edges, I'm going to cut the tapes a little bit longer so that they have long tails at the end, and that's what I'm going to use to tie it around my waist. So this is going to have to be a separate piece from the skirt that I tie on, but it's totally fine because this is like very Edwardian, so I can also use it under my Edwardian outfits too if I ever need to. So I guess it serves a double purpose, which is never a bad thing. Look what just arrived. I am so excited. It came like 3 days early, which is amazing, and opening this with one hand is no joke. Okay, there we go. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna do this off camera. There it is. This is what I'm gonna trim the gown with along the top, and I'm so excited. It's actually like not bad. The green is a lot more prominent than the red, which I am happy with, and I think will go with the gown a little bit better. So I am so excited because this means I can actually finish off this dress a lot sooner than I thought I'd be able to. I also love how the shade of the red is a little bit rustier. It's not such a bright red, so it's almost like a bronze color, which I think goes a lot nicer with the green than like a bright red would have. So I am super happy with this. I'm gonna go put it on the dress and see what it looks like. Okay, I pinned this on just to like have a little bit of an idea of how it would look because I could not resist. I'm really happy with this. I'm so glad that I had this instinct. It was absolutely correct. Yeah, this is awesome. There's even like enough of the organza here that I could do a full overlay of the skirt if I wanted to. I don't think I do want to, but maybe I'll play around with that a little bit and see how it looks. But anyway, I just very roughly pinned this along the top of the bodice. This will be a lot more neat and tidy. And when I do the tucks, like it's not going to be quite as poofy, but this is just to sort of give myself, and I guess all of you, an idea of like how the colors will look with the bodice. And I'm like super happy with this. I love it. I love it. This is awesome. All right, so I got to get back to work now. And as soon as my work day's over, I am back at it. So I thought about this some more while I was working, and I think I figured out my bustle pad dilemma. And what I'm going to do is, oh, hi, Bonsai. Hi, sweetheart. So I have these two, Bonsai. So I have these two buttons, and then I have this button. What is it, baby? What's going on? I know it's not supper time yet. We still have a little while. It's not supper time yet. We just gotta wait a few minutes, okay? Yeah, good boy. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna take these two buttons. Bonsai. What are you doing? What are you doing, you goofball? You're not gonna leave me alone until I feed you, are you? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to attach these two buttons to the inside of the bodice where it meets the skirt. And what I'm going to do is, instead of creating like a long tie, I'm going to bind this off with the satin bias tape. I'm going to create a little loop at the end of each point here, and then I'm going to use it to attach to the buttons so that I can actually just button this bustle pad inside the dress. So that solves the problem of the zipper getting in the way, and it also solves the problem of risking this slipping down while I wear it. So it'll help the bustle stay up if I button it to here, and it'll also make it removable so that I can actually zipper the dress up. So I think that's going to work. I mean, in theory it works, but we're going to try it out and see what happens, and if not, I guess we'll go back to the drawing board. To make the first loop, I'm just folding the bias tape in half so that it seals off the ends of the binding. Then I'm just going in with a quick and easy running back stitch to secure those two folded ends together. I'm not using a regular back stitch here because I don't need this to be super strong, since it's going to just end up getting tucked into the binding anyway, so a running back stitch will save me both time and mental effort. Once that's done, I'm just tucking the ends of that little tail into the binding, and now I'm just going to sew that shut so that it stays down, and then that end is nice and concealed. To finish off the loop, I'm just securing it down with a little bit of a felling stitch so that it reinforces the stitching I've already done. This is an important step because it's a button loop, so it's going to take a lot of strain, and we definitely don't want that popping out or coming loose at any point. With that first loop done, I can now continue sewing down the binding on the other side and then finish off with that second loop on the other side as well. And the bustle pad is done. I love how it holds its shape. You can see there, it's like a half moon. And I've done the little tabs at the end that will hook onto the buttons. So I think we can now move on to the skirt. That's my favorite part, and I'm so excited. Wait, I lied. Before we do the skirt, we have to pad out these bust cups. I mean, I guess I could do that after the skirt, but while I'm on this padding adventure, I might as well just get this part done. So basically all I'm gonna do here is the same idea as with the bustle. I'm just gonna cut out two little like half moon shapes out of this cotton, and then I'm going to stuff it with the wool, and then I'm just going to lightly tack it into the inside. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this off camera because I did the bustle on camera. You get the idea. It's the exact same thing, just a lot smaller and times two. So I'm going to go ahead, do this off camera, and I will check back with you when it's done. Okay, so, oh wait, this light is like, ugh. There we go. No, wait, hold on. You know what? I'm just gonna turn this light off. Whatever, it's fine. Okay, there we go. So I put the boob cup in and then tried it on, and it's not great. It's actually worse than without a boob cup at all. Not that it was like ever bad without a boob cup. I just thought that like maybe the boob cup would like add a little extra oomph. Turns out it doesn't. So we're just gonna go ahead and unpick that. I'll show you what it looks like. Here it is. So it didn't work out the way that I thought it would, so that's okay. It's just one less thing we have to do. So I'm going to go ahead and unpick this, and then we can actually start on the skirt, like for real this time. Now it's time to pin the skirt to the bodice so that I can figure out where the back pleat is going to go and also how big it's going to be. I'm starting by lining up center front to the center front of the bodice, and then from there I can figure out how much excess of skirt will be left in the back, and that's the amount that I'm going to have to pleat down so that the skirt is the same width as the bodice. If that's confusing, don't worry, just follow along, it'll make sense in a minute. Now I'm just going to start pinning the skirt to the bodice, and that will help hold it in place when I go to do my pleat. Editing Megan here, sitting up in bed editing, and I realized that my camera did not capture the footage of me actually pleating the skirt down into the bodice. It ran out of storage, and I didn't realize that until like after I went to like download all the footage onto my editing software. So unfortunately, I do not have any footage of the actual process of pleating the skirt down into the bodice, but what I will do is film the part where I basted the pleats, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Basically, when you attach a skirt to a bodice and the skirt is a lot wider than the bodice, you have to somehow get that skirt to fit down into the size that the bodice is. So there's a lot of ways to do this. You can either like run a gathering thread through the top of the skirt and then gather it down until it fits the bodice, or you can pleat it down, which is what I'm doing here, except instead of pleating it all the way around, I'm pleating it just at the back because I want those nice pleats to be at the back of the skirt to give it that kind of bustle effect, because what that does is it actually concentrates all of the volume of the skirt into the back. So that'll make a lot more sense when I show you, but that's why I put those pleats in the back of the skirt and why I didn't pleat it around the entirety of the skirt. So, you'll see that when I go to base those pleats down, but basically that's just what the footage was, and that's how I would have explained it if I had actually had that footage to show you. Okay, so what I was trying to explain before is that I have made these two deep pleats in the back so that now it actually fits the bodice. So when the bodice closes, it's the same width, so that when I put the zipper in, the zipper will go from here all the way down here to center back, and then the whole thing will just close as one. And now it actually fits the bodice. And the reason I chose to put the pleat in that place is because the zipper will get sewn in here. So you can see already when it's closed, it's gonna hide that zipper. And what you're gonna end up with is this lovely pleated skirt, which is hard to see like this, but you get the gist. But yeah, so it's just gonna create like a lot of this volume in the back here, and it's gonna have this nice deep pleat that ends in like a train on the ground. So it's gonna be really pretty once it's on. I just have to baste these pleats down with basting stitches so that it holds them, because I don't trust the pins to hold the pleats in place throughout the rest of this process. So I'm going to put a few quick basting stitches in here, and then we're ready to figure out where we want to put the organza. I'm doing the basting stitches in white thread so that they're easy to see, because as soon as this dress all goes together and the zipper is in, then these basting stitches will be taken out. So this is just to hold the pleats in place while I put the trim on and finish off the rest of the gown. Something that happens sometimes when you hand sew is that your thread will get knotted, but the more you do it, the better you will get at unpicking those knots. It is a minor inconvenience, but honestly, I don't even really notice it anymore. It's just what happens when you hand sew, unfortunately. All right, I just pinned the skirt to the bodice so that I could check the pleats and see if I was happy with the placement, and boy, am I ever happy with the placement. I still have no closures in. The zipper will be the very last thing I do on this project. So I'm holding it shut currently so that I don't flash everybody, but I'm super happy with it. Like, look at that pleat at the back. It's so awesome. I don't have the bustle on right now because I need to like attach it to the skirt. That'll be the second last thing I do before I put the zipper in, but I am super happy. All right, filming this on my lunch break so that I have a little bit of daylight to do this in, but I was playing around with some of the placement of the organza, and I think what I'm gonna do is have like a kind of bow at the back. I'm gonna make these like big organza puffs and then have a little bit of a trail down the back of the skirt, and I'm gonna do it on either side of the zipper so that we don't hide that nice pleat that we've made in the back, but this will also just sort of serve to emphasize that like bustle line that I've got going on here. I've been studying photos of like 1950s style ball gowns, and a lot of them have this like puffy organza thing in the back, so I think I'm gonna just follow those lines and copy that here. I'm gonna cut a length of this organza fabric to the same length as my dress, and it's about 60 inches wide. So I'm gonna keep the width in the fabric, and then I'm just gonna gather it up like this widthwise to make the puff. And that'll give me a nice wide puff at the back, and I'm gonna make 2 of those. So this is gonna require some hemming. So maybe I won't get this done as quickly as I thought, but that's okay. So I think we're gonna do that. I'll trim the skirt first, and then I'll do the bodice, since I already know what I'm doing for the bodice. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this. To hem the organza, I'm just gently folding over the edge 2 times, and this is so that we can seal that raw edge, and we want this to be as tiny as possible because it's a sheer fabric, so we want the hems to be almost invisible. Then I'm just going in with my needle and thread and doing a very, very simple felling stitch to hold that turned over edge down, and I'm just going to continue to do this along all 4 edges of this piece of fabric. Okay, so you can see I've done this tiny little hem, and I've hemmed probably about 5 inches of this. So just for reference, that took about 10 minutes to hem these 5 inches, and I still have like 40 more to go just on one side. So I have to hem all 4 sides of this piece, which is quite large. It's no joke. And then I have another piece the same size to hem, same thing, all 4 sides. And then I have to hem the 2 top rectangle bits that are going to be attached to the bodice. So that is a lot of hemming. Realistically, this is probably going to take me, I'm estimating 2 to 3 days to finish all this hemming. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, since you have a good idea of what it's supposed to look like when you hem. I just did a very, very simple felling stitch, which I don't know if you can see, if my camera will focus. Yep, there we go. If you can see the little tiny felling stitches. So I'm going to continue to do that around all 4 sides, and then I will press these flat with an iron once I'm finished all of the hemming, and then I will check back with you when this is all done and ready to be attached to the dress. Okay, so it is 3 days later, as I suspected. That's about how long it took me to do all this hemming, but I have hemmed all 4 pieces and pressed them flat, so you can see my camera will focus. I don't know if you can see it, but tiny little, there we go, tiny little felling stitches in there. So now that all 4 pieces are hemmed, I'm going to go ahead and trim the gown. I'm going to do the big bow-like thing on the back of this skirt, and then we're going to do the puffs across the top of the bodice. So I'm hoping to finish this today. We'll see if that actually happens, but that is my goal. So let's go. To make the skirt bows, I'm just folding over the organza lengthwise and then measuring the sides to make sure that it's even the whole way across. Then I'm pinning it in place so that it stays even while I run the gathering stitch through it. Next, I'm just running a gathering stitch all along that edge that I pinned up, gathering the puff as I go. And once those puffs have been gathered up, I am attaching them to the skirt with a simple back stitch. All right, so now that I've got these things attached, is just go around the waistline, and I'm gonna have to hem these little bits here because they're fraying, and then I can start on the bodice trim. So it is now 8:20 at night, so it looks like I can still make my deadline of finishing this by the end of the day if I really motor. I love it. I love it. Yes, that's awesome. Okay. So the skirt is still pinned together, obviously, because I don't have any closures on it yet, but I am super happy with this. No notes, we're good. All right, time for the bodice. Going ahead and making that bodice trim, I'm just doing it much the same way as I did with the skirt, just gathering it up at various points in that little strip of fabric and puffing it out and then sewing it down. Then I'm just tacking it onto the top of the bodice. I'm not being too neat and tidy here or trying to make like the strongest stitches in the world, because I want this to be removable if I ever want to take the trim off and wear the gown at some other time of year that isn't Christmas. All right, so last night I pinned everything together, tried everything on, and I realized that the two puffs at the back of the dress look really good when it's just a skirt, but when you put the bodice on and then put the whole thing on with the little skirt support bum roll underneath, it actually ruins the whole shape of the dress. Like that lovely S-back curve that I loved about the bum roll, it gets completely obscured with the two puffs at the back. So what I think I'm gonna do is I am going to remove one of the puffs. So here's the bodice with the little puff trim. I love it. It's super cute. You can see I've pinned it on here. I haven't like actually sewn it on yet, but what I'm going to do is like remove the puffs, and then I'm going to sew the bodice to the skirt, and then I'm going to sew just one of the puffs on like off to the side a little bit so it's not directly at the back. And I was sort of playing around with the placement last night, and I'm really happy with it to be just on one side because then it looks like really cool and asymmetrical. So that's what we're going to do. New plan. This dress totally does not look like how I thought it would look when I started planning this project, but that's okay. That's why it's an adventure. Then once the skirt and bodice are attached, I'm just sewing in those two buttons at the inside center front of the dress where I will be hooking in the bum pad. Second last step is to sew in the zipper, and once that's done, all I have to do is attach the puff and this is done. Bit of a setback. My zipper broke when I was reattaching it. It's the same zipper that came on the dress, and the little zipper pull just legit like came straight off when I went to pull it up. So I'm gonna have to order a new zipper, which means this is not getting done today as I was hoping. But hey, I mean, all that's left is to put in the zipper, right? So that's good.
2 days later.
Okay, so really quickly, I wanted to show you the inside of this dress because it is done now. So I don't know if you can see it. This is the center front. Here are the two buttons. I ended up moving them more to the side. I tried it with the two buttons like right here, but it just ended up being too bulky at the front. So I moved them to the side. And as you can see, I've buttoned the bum roll on the inside here. So that can just add some shape to the back, and if I want to, I can just unbutton this, and then I can have a little bit of a flatter skirt. So I have that option, and then also it's easier to zip up. Usually what I do to get into it is I unbutton one side, get into the dress, button it up, and then zip the dress up, and then that seems to work pretty well. So I also made the trim at the side removable. There's two snaps here, so I can snap this bow on and off, so that if I want to wear the dress without it, I can also do that. So I made this a little bit customizable, so it doesn't just strictly have to be a Christmas dress. I can remove this trim and remove this, and it'll just be like an emerald green gown. So I'm gonna go put this on and do the grand reveal. Okay, so there you have it. That was my epic thrift flip gown project. Sort of ended up being like Dior circa 1952 inspired. I did not intend that when I started out with this project, but that's just kind of how it evolved. And I'm really happy that it did. I am so pleased with this dress in spite of the zipper setback. I'm really glad that I pushed through that, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm so excited to wear this at Christmas. So if you watched this video all the way through to the end, thank you for sticking with me. Thank you as well to those who checked out the first part of the video. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, go check it out. I'll link to it somewhere like on the screen here. I'll also link to it in the description below. It just goes through the first part, how the dress looked like before, how I did the bodice, sort of the inspiration of it. And then part two obviously is like the skirt and the grand reveal and also the bum pad. So I hope that this gave you a little bit of an idea of what's possible to do with thrift finds. Don't be discouraged if you go to a thrift store and you find something and you really love it, but maybe it doesn't fit or maybe you don't like the shape. Those things can be changed. Obviously, this is a completely different dress from the one that I started out with, and now it actually fits me. So don't be discouraged. There are even ways to upsize things if you find something that's too small. There's lots you can do with that. And actually, maybe if you want me to do a video on like upsizing something, drop me a comment below, let me know, and I can definitely do that at some point. Thanks again for those of you who stuck around. If you haven't had a chance to like and subscribe, what are you waiting for? I do thrift flips sometimes on this channel. I do sewing tutorials. I do like fashion history videos and rants. I have a video coming up on like a history of men's clothing and why it's so boring. So that's like in the research stage right now. I also sometimes do deep dives on like queer and LGBTQ issues. So if that's your kind of jam, then stick around for that. If you like and subscribe, it really helps the channel out. I'm so close to my goal of 1,000 subscribers. That's what I set out to do when I started this channel like over a year ago now. So I'm almost there. So if you watch these videos and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do that. I promise I won't spam you. I don't put out videos that often. So anyways, I hope that you all have a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you all in the next one, probably sometime in the new year, because I'm going to be hella busy the next few weeks. Happy holidays, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Toodaloo.